Syracuse football has no chance to win this game, right? They can't go into Death Valley and win. Well, not so fast. Let's talk about how Syracuse might be able to pull off this upset.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. Thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day, and we are always free and available wherever you get your podcasts, whether you're watching Locked On Syracuse right now on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite audio platform. On today's show, Syracuse football has zero chance to go into Death Valley and win, right? No chance. They can't possibly win this game on Saturday. Nobody giving Syracuse a chance. Well, we're going to go over three keys for Syracuse to possibly pull off this upset. How Syracuse football on offense needs to run quick developing plays to contain that Clemson pass rush. And on defense, Syracuse football, we're going to talk about this later on. They have to contain Clemson's running game with Adam Randall, their converted wide receiver to running back, to also Cade Klubnik, their quarterback. Because if they can contain the run, well, that puts more pressure on Clemson's passing game. But first and foremost, and we're about to get into it right now, Syracuse football, in order to have a chance to actually win this game and shock the nation, send Clemson home for the rest of the season, even though technically they still have to play their remaining games, they must start fast. All that and more here on today's edition of Locked On Syracuse. Now, before we get to everything, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will be honest with you all. I do not like this matchup for Syracuse football. You got a Clemson Tigers team that's 1-2, that's a couple of plays away from being 3-0, that on paper has more talent than Syracuse. That is undeniable. It is undeniable that on paper, Clemson has more talent than Syracuse. And rightfully so. They enter this game as a heavy favorite against our beloved Syracuse Orange. They are 16.5-point favorites over on FanDuel to defeat Syracuse. And actually, that means that some of the money recently has been coming in on Syracuse because yesterday, Syracuse was a 17.5-point underdog. So the line has moved 1 point in Syracuse's direction here. But I also get the sense, and a lot of it is based on the conversation with Morgan Thomas of Locked On Clemson Tigers yesterday, that Clemson is not exactly thrilled for this matchup either. They are very well aware also of Syracuse's weird history of keeping it close with the Clemson Tigers, even though Syracuse, for the most part, has not been very good over the past 10 years. They just haven't. And we know that as Syracuse fans. And Clemson, meanwhile, has been reigning atop the ACC during that time. And they're also struggling, like we've talked about throughout the week. They know that Clemson is playing for their season starting on Saturday for the rest of the season. They really cannot lose another game. If they lose, I don't see how they are able to recover from 1-3 to all of a sudden make the college football playoff. It just does not seem possible. And because of this doubt that is already there with Clemson right now, being 1-2, facing a lot of adversity right now, if Syracuse can start this game fast, put that seed of doubt into Clemson. Morgan already mentioned this yesterday. Yeah, it's in Death Valley. That gives them home field advantage. Don't be surprised if Syracuse starts fast, that Clemson crowd starts to turn on their home team. That's just a reality of what could happen. And we'll see if Syracuse is able to get off to a hot start, if Clemson can recover from it, if they can handle the pressure of 1-2, and you're down, let's say, multiple scores to a quote unquote inferior Syracuse football team. How would they respond to it? I guess we'll find out if Syracuse is able to start fast. And I know that this first key is not exactly an X's and O's type key. It's more about the mental aspect of the game. And it's sort of similar to how Syracuse needed to play versus Tennessee in week one. We knew heading into week one that whether you were picking Syracuse to upset Tennessee or not, that it would be an upset if Syracuse beat Tennessee, because Tennessee, like Clemson, has more talent on paper. And I mentioned in the lead up to that game that Syracuse needed to plant that seed of doubt into Tennessee. Well, that's not exactly what happened, because Tennessee went up 17-0 on Syracuse in the first quarter. And to Syracuse's credit, they didn't quit. They didn't just roll over and say, all right, we're going to lose this game 45-3. We're going to get absolutely destroyed. No, they hung with Tennessee, but it was only after they had fallen behind 17-0. And I understand, and I think we're all pretty well aware of Syracuse's comeback history under head coach Fran Brown. Go back to last season when you had to come back against Virginia Tech. Obviously, the big comeback against Miami to close the regular season, a Miami team that at the time was going to make the college football playoff and play for an ACC championship game. And Syracuse came back from 21 points down to defeat the Miami Hurricanes, a better team on paper than them, by the way. But we should also know that coming back in games is not exactly a good recipe for success. I am almost positive it wasn't written in Syracuse's game plan to fall behind 21-0 to Miami, or go to this season, go to week 2 against UConn, fall behind by multiple scores in the fourth quarter and have to come back in the final 5 minutes of that game and go to overtime to defeat UConn. I'm almost positive that was not written in the game plan. And the reason why it's not written in the game plan is because making up a big deficit, particularly against a team that already has more talent than you, is extremely difficult. Now, if Syracuse, like we mentioned, can get off to that hot start and plant that seed of doubt into Clemson and plant that seed of doubt with their fans and kind of quiet that crowd, which will definitely be loud early, but if you can make them feel nervous and have that nervous energy in the building, well, all of a sudden, maybe Syracuse can use that to their advantage. I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, if Syracuse goes up 14-0, they're going to then blow out Clemson. But at that point, you are making Clemson come from behind with that pressure of, if they don't come from behind, their season is over. So for Syracuse, the biggest key to beating Clemson, I don't care how they have to do this. I don't care if it's because Clemson is the one stinking and Syracuse is just letting them stink. The Orange have to get off to a hot start. Go up 10-0 in the first 7 minutes of this game. Is that asking too much? Comment your thoughts in the comment section below. Because out of all the possible outcomes that I imagine from this game, the one outcome that I really can't imagine is Syracuse football coming from behind to win, particularly if they get off to such a slow start. That's the one outcome I really can't imagine. What I can see happening in a world where Syracuse upsets the Clemson Tigers is they go up early and they just survive the rest of the way. How do you think Syracuse is going to perform on Saturday? Comment your thoughts in the comments section below. And more importantly, what are the keys for Syracuse to beat Clemson? Comment your thoughts in the comments section below. Now, coming up, we'll get to more X's and O's type keys. How Syracuse football, in order to keep this Clemson passing game struggling, they have to actually worry about their rushing attack. Stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. And for Syracuse football, Steve Angeli delivered in a big way with over 400 yards and 5 touchdowns versus Colgate on Friday night when the pressure was on. He came through, and if you've been watching week after week, you would know by now that Steve Angeli's performance was not a fluke. He is on a streak, and just like Steve Angeli delivered for Syracuse football, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So are you ready to play over on FanDuel? Well, now's your chance. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. It's no secret that Clemson's offense through 3 games has been struggling. And it doesn't mean that Clemson can't figure it out the rest of the way, that they can't turn it on starting this Saturday against Syracuse. I mean, that's why I'm super duper worried about this matchup, because maybe this is the week that Clemson on offense finally figures it out, particularly with a Syracuse defense, which, let's be honest, I mean, us Syracuse fans who've been following are pretty well aware of this, that the defense definitely has some questions, which we have talked about here on Locked On Syracuse, how they don't typically rush the passer well. They don't really stop the running game either. There's not much to like about Syracuse's defense right now, but hey, you have a Clemson offense that's struggling. It's only a matter of time until they figure it out, we think. But right now, they're struggling, particularly in their passing game. Most of their problems are really with their quarterback in Cade Klubnik. And in all seriousness, the only guy that seems to be performing to expectations in their passing game is wide receiver Bryant Wesco. That's about it. We'll see if Antonio Williams is ready to go for Saturday. That would be a big plus for Clemson in the lineup. If he can't go, well, it is what it is, right? You still got to play the games. I don't want to see anyone be hurt. I want everyone happy and healthy. But if he's not playing, he's not playing. Still got to play the games, right? But with that being said, let's talk about Clemson's rushing attack instead of their passing attack, and how Syracuse football, their second biggest key in this game, is to slow down Clemson's running game. Now, for the most part, I don't feel like I need to lecture you all about how important a running game is to an offense and how it can open up the passing game for any team. I mean, very few offenses, doesn't matter the level of football, can operate like the Syracuse offense, where they don't necessarily need the rushing attack to be clicking in order to get the passing attack going. Syracuse is in many ways an outlier with how they run their offense. Like I just said, they seem to be able to throw the football even when they can't necessarily get anything going on the ground. But that's not most teams. So if you're Syracuse, I'm not going to ask the Syracuse, although it would be nice if this could happen. It would be great if Syracuse could generate a pass rush on Cade Klubnik and get through that Clemson offensive line. That'd be great, but I'm not going to ask for it because I don't have much faith that this Syracuse team can actually rush the passer effectively and put pressure on Cade Klubnik. I just don't. And I hope to be wrong as a Syracuse fan. But as of right now, looking at these matchups, looking at Clemson's talent up front, looking at Syracuse and how they performed up front, I don't see how they're generating much pressure on Cade Klubnik. So I'm not going to say, all right, you got to generate pressure, because I just don't see that really happening. Instead, the best way to keep Clemson's passing game down is to slow down their rushing attack. And they got two main guys. The first is their running back in Adam Randall, who is a converted wide receiver. Now, in week 1 against LSU, Clemson said, we're just not going to use the guy. They gave him only 5 carries. But then they started to smarten up a little bit, because in week 2, 21 carries, 112 yards for Adam Randall on the ground. Then in week 3 against Georgia Tech, he was pretty good too. He had 15 carries for 80 yards. Both of those games, he averaged 5.3 yards a carry. So that's number one that you have to look out for. They're running back, a converted wide receiver in Adam Randall. And then after that, it's actually their quarterback in Cade Klubnik. That's right. He's a pretty mobile quarterback. And at times, Cade's mobility has actually been one of the factors in why he's struggling, because he doesn't always seem to know how to use his mobility. It's like sometimes his first read is not there and his next instinct is to run. When in reality, what you want to do as a quarterback is go through your progressions and then run if you need to run. Right? Makes sense? That being said, he's still a very good runner with the football. Last week against Georgia Tech, he had 62 rushing yards and a touchdown. Last year, nearly 500 rushing yards, 463 to be exact. I rounded up a little bit. I was a little nice. I was generous. And 7 touchdowns. So how do you contain this? Well, first and foremost, I'm not asking Syracuse's edge rushers to necessarily be able to get home on Cade Klubnik, but what they need to do is their number one job on the edge, which is set the edge. Don't let Cade Klubnik use his legs and get outside of you. Force him into the middle. If he's going to scramble, make him scramble up the middle. And then at that point, you're leaving it up to your interior defensive line to maybe make a nice big play, get a stop, or you're leaving it up to your linebackers, which means tackling is so, so important. And by the way, if Cade Klubnik decides to scramble, he's a runner. Just keep that in mind. He's a runner if he decides to scramble. You are allowed to hit the quarterback when he's a runner. Okay, I'm not saying injure him or anything like that, but just keep that in mind. If he's a runner, you're allowed to tackle him. Don't miss tackles. No missed tackles. That is not, I'm not going to say it's, be perfect or anything like that, but you get the point. Cade Klubnik scrambles, have the edge rushers set the edge. Then you have your linebackers in the middle, Derek McDonald, Antoine Delorier, Gary Bryant. All those guys have to step up and make a tackle. Bottom line is this. We know the Clemson passing attack right now is struggling. The best way to stop a passing attack is generate a pass rush. I don't think Syracuse is going to be able to generate a pass rush. So how can they keep Clemson down? How can they keep Cade Klubnik struggling? You got to stop the run, or at least contain the run. Because if you can contain the run and force Clemson to pass, puts more pressure on their passing attack. And then you can pretty much do what you want to defend the pass, because you've already established you can stop the run. Comment your thoughts in the comments section below. Your keys for Syracuse to upset the Clemson Tigers. Now, coming up on offense, Syracuse, they got to run quick plays. Stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. This is Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. Folks, thank you so much for making it to this point of the podcast. And we still got plenty more to talk about as far as keys for Syracuse to upset Clemson. But before we do so, since you've already made it this far in the podcast, I hope that means you enjoy Locked On Syracuse. And if so, if you can just do me this quick favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel grow to reach all Syracuse Orange fans. Now, how can Syracuse upset the Clemson Tigers? Well, on offense, they need to run quick developing plays. We have discussed very similar to how Cade Klubnik on offense is struggling, but he's got a lot of talent, and we want to make sure that that talent, doesn't come out of its cage on Saturday. It stays in. Similar with the Clemson defensive line. Because the defensive line for Clemson, which was going into the year one of the best defensive lines on paper in the country, has not necessarily performed to expectations. But it feels like only a matter of time before TJ Parker and Peter Woods realize that they're projected first-round picks for a reason. One tackle for loss through 3 games. What are the odds that that's going to hold up over the course of an entire college football season? Not likely. So if you're Syracuse, it's about hoping that they don't wake up for Saturday, that they're down for one more game, and then Clemson can, of course, wake up and realize their talent. And I should mention that Purdue transfer Will Helt is holding up his end of the bargain. He has been very good for the Clemson Tigers to start this season. But I still have so much respect for this defensive line, and so does head coach Fran Brown. He spoke about it in his press conference. He was watching the film, and oh boy, those guys are good. They're projected first-round picks for a reason. They are more talented than anyone Syracuse can throw out there along the offensive line. Does Syracuse football along the offensive line have any projected first-round pick? No. How about a second-round pick? No. Third-round pick? No. They don't. They do not have the same talent like Clemson does along their defensive line. With that being said, in order to counter that defensive line, they need to run quick developing plays. You need to almost speed them up. And Jeff Nixon, the offensive coordinator of Syracuse, does a very good job of this usually. Because Syracuse's offense, for the most part, relies on its short to intermediate passing game, meaning the ball is out of the quarterback's hands oftentimes before the pass rush of the opponent can really get home. Because I don't care how great you are, if a quarterback can get rid of the ball within 2 seconds, 1-2 throw, I don't care who you are, it's very, very difficult to even generate any sort of pressure on a quarterback. That's what made Tom Brady so great, by the way. Nobody really talks about what made Tom Brady so great. It was the fact that he got rid of the ball so fast and how he knew how to move within the pocket. He wasn't mobile. He was a statue for the most part, but he could move within the pocket like the best of them. And my goodness, you couldn't touch him. And it wasn't necessarily because of how great their offensive lines were in New England and Tampa, although they had good offensive lines, but it was Tom Brady could get rid of the ball quickly. Very, very quickly. So it was hard to touch him. And so that means Steve Angeli, quick release. That ball has got to be out as soon as possible. I would like Syracuse to use a lot of screens, sucker in the defensive line a little bit. I like the play where they have Dan Villari leak out in the flat, the tight end. That seemed to work at times against a team like Tennessee, who also has a ferocious defensive front, which, by the way, Syracuse scored 4 touchdowns on that Tennessee defense. But you also can't be too predictable with your offense, because if Syracuse becomes predictable, well, then all of a sudden, Clemson's going to be pretty well aware of what's coming. If Syracuse, time after time after time, is going to continuously do the same thing, which is typically a short to intermediate passing game, well, what do you think their defensive backs are going to do? They're going to sit on it. So there is a time and place for everything. I think trick plays could definitely work in Syracuse's favor. Of course, you got to be mindful of the situation and the down and distance that you're in. If it's 2nd and 1, you don't need to be running an end around that can possibly lose 5-10 yards. So it's about time and place when you're going to run plays like that, trick plays. But I'm open to them. That's for sure. I don't know if Syracuse ran any trick plays versus Tennessee, but they definitely should against Clemson. What this also means for Syracuse is that their wide receivers need to create separation and create separation quickly. Quick slants, they got to somehow get open. Cross the face, as they say, of the defensive back. They have to get open. Otherwise, yes, Steve Angeli can get rid of the ball on time, but if the receiver isn't open, it's going to be an incomplete pass or worse. Right? This is not going to be a game, or this is going to be a very, very difficult game for Syracuse to win. And it's going to be tough for Syracuse to move the ball on this Clemson defense. But if somehow they can open up this short passing game with quick developing plays, possibly opens up over the top and going deep as well. Comment your thoughts in the comments section below how you think Syracuse can possibly upset the Clemson Tigers. And do you think Syracuse is going to upset Clemson? Comment your thoughts in the comments section below. Now, as far as what's coming up on Locked On Syracuse here in the near future, tomorrow, we got Poll Friday predicting the outcome of Syracuse versus Clemson. I gave my prediction yesterday with Morgan Thomas, but I do want to change my store output. So I'll talk about that tomorrow on Poll Friday. And then on Saturday, of course, that's game day. Syracuse versus Clemson at noon Eastern, and there will be a full post-game reaction podcast. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. Tell all your friends about Locked On Syracuse, and I will see you all again soon.